He acted out nearly every expression that we use today, except for sucking the chrome off a ball hitch.
His whole life was an accident.
No other person in history has influenced the American vernacular more so than Charles Lindgren. Yet you won't find him in your history books, and you will not find him in your English books.
For instance, laughing all the way to the bank. Charles did that.
They call them idioms, but I've always said they should call them Lindgridioms.
Charles literally found another way to skin a cat.
Beating around the bush? Charles did that February 18th, 1922. Spilling the beans? April 22.
An entirely accidental legacy. None of it was planned, scripted, preordained.
Everyone quotes him, and no one knows him. Hopefully, now they will.
You may have quoted him, recited small pieces of his life story. You probably even borrowed some of his jokes to lighten up the mood at your workplace. Without realizing it, everyone knows a little something about Charles Lindgren's life. But very few know about the man. I'm Matt Weinbach, and this is American People. Born in a barn, Charles Daniel Lindgren would often leave doors open wherever he went.
1898, turn of the century, and everyone in Anytown, Pennsylvania is poor. Even rich people are poor. But especially poor, it was a family living on Mean Street called the Lindgrens.
James Lindgren, Charles' father, worked at a pork factory, and his only pay was bacon. So he'd work 18 hours a day, then he'd bring home the bacon.
It's very difficult for one to appreciate just how poor the Lindgren family was. That is, until one considers that the entire family only had one pair of pants. And Mrs. Lindgren wore those pants, which allowed her to leave the house, interact with others, and so on and so forth. Therefore, she was the one to make the important decisions in the family.
In the summer of 1917, Charles' senior year of high school, he got a job in a salt mine. His time on the job, combined with his time at school, meant that he could no longer spend his hours keeping his mother company. This turned out to be tragic.
One afternoon, after spending the entire morning alone, Martha Lindgren became bored, and it's documented that she did try fighting it. But after a few hours succumbed to it, and shortly before supper time, Martha Lindgren died of boredom.
So in 1917, she died, and that happened to be the same year that Woodrow Wilson declared war on Austria-Hungary. And he was lost, you know, he was searching, and like a lot of young men, you know, he found purpose through enlistment.
This is exactly what Charles needed at the time. He quit his job at the old salt mine and grabbed the first train to Fort Worth.
Things at boot camp started out fine until the soldiers started target practice.
According to Army documents, this is funny, Sergeant Benjamin Leroy attested that Charles was the worst shot he or anyone had ever seen.
Private Lindgren was unable to hit even one of the targets. Out of curiosity, we gradually made the targets bigger. And when that didn't seem to help, well, we decided to make him an unarmed scout.
Right after his military training, he then was stationed in Germany. As soon as he got to Germany, he was sent out to scout the land. Immediately he was lost. He could not find anyone, anything. He was starving for 2 days, I believe it was.
And during that time, he became ravenously hungry, and he actually became so hungry he ate his own horse. The whole thing.
So there's this famous general, right? Elliot Rovenhausen, General Elliot Rovenhausen, and he wrote a book, General's Letters, General's Memoirs, something like that. But in the book, he actually mentions the incident with my great-grandfather.
We were on our way back to the South Point when we discovered a Private Charles Lindgren of the 83rd Infantry half-starved and delirious. He had wandered up a creek in a canoe without paddles.
Finally, the war ended and Charles returned home. It was back to the old salt mines for him.
Like a lot of people of that generation, he came home to a lot of confusion. He was disillusioned. This was the lost generation. And the war had done nothing to help him deal with his mother's death. You know, Martha's boredom is a terrible, terrible way to go. And Charles wandered around in darkness for quite some time until a light shone through, not literally.
Great-granddad, he didn't want anyone else to suffer from boredom like his mom did, you know. So he vowed to fight boredom by becoming an entertainer himself.
Okay, now this gets me excited. This is my favorite, my mother knows this. This is my favorite part of Charles's history. I love all of Charles's history, but this is the best. He forms this act, and what was so unique about his act is he used jokes that applied to everyday situations that everyday people could use in their everyday lives. And he hits the vaudeville circuit like a madman and almost immediately catches the eye of a young producer named Phil Phillips. If you do your research, he's also called Snappy Phillips.
So Phil took a big chance and got Charles a spot on the Magic Fun Time Radio Extravaganza Variety Radio Hour.
She said, "Did you get your hair cut?" I said, "No, I got them all cut."
People really loved it. I mean, they loved it. They'd never heard anything like it, you know?
I said, "Yes, it's Wednesday. Wednesday, all day."
So by Monday morning, people were telling his jokes everywhere. I mean, in every office, every barbershop, every break room. And by the end of the day, no one remembered who had originally written the material. You know, it was one of those rare cases where, you know, the work becomes so big so fast that it actually eclipses the man. And no one remembers the man, but the material has become part of everyone's collective consciousness.
When he finally came out of the washroom, I said, "Did you fall in?" "Yes." "Yeah." I told my boss I wasn't coming into work because I was sick. My boss said, "You're sick?" I said, "That's right. I'm sick of I'm sick of working, yes."
The thing is, he wasn't sick of working. He was out there every night still telling jokes, you know, and people were still yelling out punchlines before he could get to them, and you know, he got pretty angry sometimes. It's pretty frustrating.
Finally, after suffering years of anger and irritability, Charles sought help at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, and that's actually where he met his wife, Lindgren, or Hergenstein at the time. And here's the funny part. She actually helped out in the procedure, the rectal exam, where they found the solution to Charles' problem, which was that something had crawled up his ass and died.
Charles and Linda were set to marry December of '31, the coldest December Pennsylvania had seen that century. But Charles had poor circulation and developed cold feet. Unable even to walk down the aisle, Charles backed out of the wedding because of cold feet. Later, when the weather became warmer, they married.
Not a lot of details are actually known about this part of Charles's life, and I've dug deep. If someone would know about it, I would. But they moved into a house. They had a child in '49, Rebecca, and they lived there contentedly, it would seem, until Charles went to look at his grandpa's now abandoned farm.
My dad saw this farm, and he absolutely loved it. And so he decided to buy it. And after he bought it, he suffered a heart attack.
As my mom tells it, you know, he grabbed his left arm and clutched his chest and, you know, staggered a little bit. And before he fell dead to the ground, he accidentally kicked over a bucket.
Yes, he died ass high in clovers. That expression never really caught on.
Charles passed away on August 15, 1957. He was 59 years old. Charles may be gone, but he's certainly not forgotten. He lives on in each of us every time we get a frog in our throat or shoot the moon. I'm Matt Weinbach, and this has been American people. Thank you and good night.